Well, welcome everyone. This is our DST Region 10 Community of Practice training on writing, specifically on argumentative writing from the snail investigation from last week. So today we're going to spend, or at least in this next hour, this is the training for 3rd grade through 5th grade. And my name is Lynn Figurate. I'm from the Riverside County Office of Education. And I'm really happy to be here to talk about writing. We have many priorities that we want to accomplish with writing, particularly in argumentative writing for science. And so we'll continue to have those discussions as we're going through. If you're wanting the resources, it's on this bit.ly. For the office hours of writing, and so you'll be able to get everything there. Mariano, who is the host for our session today, will post this bit.ly in the chat, so those who are coming late, or for those of you who want to get this this particular one, will be available to you. All right, so if you remember last week, we had a video, and I also posted, by the way, the video from last week in the link. And in that video, we had a particular segment that focused just on argumentative writing. If you remember, there was a segment that we did descriptive words, and they helped us to form words to put into our narrative piece. And then we had one section just devoted to argumentative writing. What foods do snails eat? And if you remember, Fred was putting snails and different types of food that were chosen by the participants to have that. And so that I'll be referring that specifically today. So in our region, Region 10, we have an implementation focus for science literacy this year. And our implementation focus will be the regular practice of name it, verb it, finish it, recording our observations, and also the literacy that comes with modeling, those 3 areas. Today, I'll spend most of my time talking about name it, verb it, finish it, just a little bit on recording the observations. That's probably the simplest one of all of them, although it does go in the flow of our writing. And then on Thursday, you'll want to come back and really see Jeff and Jesse talking about modeling and the pieces of, the pieces of literacy that go along with modeling, and that will be important as well. So our implementation focus is really important because every year for the next 3 years we're going to have some implementation focus really for all of the folks in our region, and really that's a very powerful thing for all of us. Okay, so our standards really support the notion that we have such a focus. Take a look at the standards for 3rd grade. I have 4th and 5th grade on here, but they all say the same thing. Look at A, introduce the topic or the text they're writing about, and then the second thing is to state that opinion. Create an organizational structure that lists reasons. Take a look at 4th grade, same thing, introduce that topic or text, then state the opinion or the argument. 5th grade, same thing, introduce the topic or the text, state an opinion, create the organizational structure. Now, every grade level is the same way. Even down in kindergarten, we have that same flow that's happening. You really do not start an argument or an opinion piece without introducing that topic or the text clearly before you get writing. Now, one such strategy in order to do that would be simply to, state it, I guess, but we use name it, verb it, finish it to really formalize that and then to create a structure or a strategy that has continuity. In other words, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, we try to keep that continuity in place so that kids understand that they're going to introduce that topic or that text clearly. Now, they won't always use name it, verb it, finish it. In fact, later on in the upper grades, when they get to high school, they can use name it, verb it, finish it, but we're going to branch that out to rhetorical précis and other types of ways to argue really what their claim is going to be. And so we'll use other strategies that we will add on to that. But way down in the lower grades in elementary school, we really stay near and dear to that name it, verb it, finish it when we're creating that topic or text. It's hard enough as you're moving through all the different types of passages that you have. You're going from one text to multiple texts. It's a really good strategy that really moves very well. And we have lots of schools throughout the districts that really have focused on all of these. And so our standards really support this. And in science, then, we are constructing arguments, right? Way down in kindergarten, they're not going to be calling it opinion. They're going to be calling it arguments, even way down there. And so you're going to hear me perhaps say opinion, but please, this is science literacy. Always translate it to be that we're going to be making arguments. Formally, however, you do opinion from kindergarten up to, or TK, up through 5th grade. And do you know when we start arguments? Yes, when you get married. No, 6th grade. So in 6th grade, we're going to, we'll start the argument formally in ELA, but in science, that really is not true. In fact, most teachers down in elementary school recognize that we're going to start calling them arguments. Sometimes you really are making that claim. And so sometimes you're going to see that we might put opinion there and right next to it put claim, just so that we have that language clearly in place as we're doing this. Now, the name it, verb it, finish it is not something that just happens randomly. It's in our standards, and you can see here, even in kindergarten, name it, verb it, finish it happens way down. Now, will they master it in kindergarten? Not likely. Many kindergarten teachers recognize they'll model it. Many of the kids will be able to understand how to do it and even to write a name it, verb it, finish it. That's right, in kindergarten. And then in 1st grade, we'll have some kids coming into it, right? The kids in kindergarten, will have been reinforced, the ones that got it in 1st grade, and they're really tracking it and really moving on to more different types of passages. But I'll tell you, there are many kids that won't get it until they're like in 3rd grade. And this is why we have the power of continuity. We really want to set up a strategy that really moves from grade level to grade level to grade level. If you're a teacher, I'm sure that you get frustrated that you have to start every year in writing on something new that really we could have been reinforcing along the way. Schools that have been doing this, they've seen much success. In fact, our power is in our solidarity. It is in our being unified together and having that continuity, that grade level after grade level, they really have that. In schools that don't, they struggle. And really, by the time that we're asking them to do multiple paragraphs, when they get on the CASP test or the CAS test, it's really, by that time, it's so difficult for them. So we can see in the standards that we have pieces like recognize common types of text. We have naming that author way down at a lower grade. It's in 3rd grade that we have putting that title, the specific title, into the writing. But most kindergarten teachers recognize that's not very difficult for them, because even here we have, you see over on the right-hand side, identify that front cover, the back cover, the title page of the book. So they're identifying that already. It's not like it's very difficult for them. What may be difficult is getting that quotation mark or the underlining in or the italics. But for the most part, from kindergarten, they're not. That's not very difficult for them. Notice that I want to put name and verb finish it in a context here so that you can see the writing process is much more than just writing a sentence. In fact, in many of our classrooms in the lower grades, they may be writing just a few sentences together, random sentences that really have no organizational structure. But we even ask way down in the lower grades that we have that organizational structure. And then we have a writing process that we're going through. So we have the pre-write, the plan, the draft with revise and edit, and the final piece, or the publishable piece. And notice how in the pre-write, the draft, revise, and edit, and the final, they're all loose on this page. The only one that's tight is the plan. What that means is that it doesn't matter, I think, in many districts or in classrooms, what you use for a pre-write, how you draft and revise and edit, how you do the final. We want all of those pieces, but they should be loose for the teacher. You should be empowered as a teacher to use anything that really works for you. Some of you like to use thinking maps. Some of you don't like to use thinking maps. You go out of your way not to use thinking maps. I don't know, whatever you use, any organizational structure that helps kids to understand the reading or the text that they're presented with, very powerful. You might use one, you might use several to really get that down. But what we do ask schools and districts is that you're tight on your plan, meaning that we all do this really from TK all the way up. Now, it'll look different in TK than it does in kindergarten and so forth. By the time that we get to third grade, it'll be different, but we'll add pieces onto it, but that's tight, and the kids know what that organizational structure looks like. In this case, on this page, you're seeing one that's on a T-chart. It doesn't have to be a T-chart. It could have been something that went wrong with right from the beginning. It could have been a flea map, could have been a circle map there. I'm just showing you one example from a particular district that uses this one, and they've been very successful at being able to use the scaffold of colors and also this particular organizational structure, but you really could use anything. I'm just putting it in its context. So here for the first time then is a third grade piece, and you can see for science we would introduce that text according to the standards, then we would state that claim. But in science we're going to do something different. In between introducing that text and stating our claim, we're going to record our observation. That's going to be important for us when we're doing our writing. And then we'll provide an organizational structure. And in this case, it's called a projected plan. We're not going to go into that at all today. I'm going to focus almost all of my attention on the introducing the text so that you all understand where we're coming from. In fact, when for many of you, starting in fourth grade and in fifth grade, you're going to be asking them to do a hook or a lead. Not a bad way to do writing. That's a blue hook or a lead that we have in the sentence, but that's not the first thing that we ask the kids to write. In fact, when we ask them to do the writing in an introduction, the first thing that we have them to write is that name it, verb it, finish it, or introducing that text, then record the observation, then state the claim, projected plan, and then at the end of that introduction, go back up to the top, or even at the end of the piece to write that hook. Now, why would we do that? We do that because we want to make sure that the hook or the lead, that attention getter, is not throwing off the whole way that the text is trying to go. I don't have time to go into all of that, but it is very important that they really stay on what they're trying to write. And introducing that topic text would be the first thing that we do. The strategy, again, one strategy that we have, that name it, verb it, finish it, has proved to be very powerful because it has a lot of continuity power, and that's what we're wanting to do. Now, particularly in the name it, verb it, finish it, we have three parts in the name it that we want to attend to. It's the type of text, the title, and then the author's name. Let's all say that together. It's the type of text, the title, and the author's name. Now, sometimes you don't get all of those pieces, right? Sometimes you're going to get a piece that won't have a title, a working title on it, and so that will be omitted at the time. Sometimes you won't have an author's name, but we try to put in there the author or the mathematician, the scientist, somebody created that. If we don't know, we can fudge that one a little bit, but not really the title. That one's going to be a challenge. We call it text because a text is an umbrella that really covers everything. It's not always a genre. And genre would stay mainly to ELA anyway. A lot of times we're going to have a phenomena, or we're going to have a video or a picture in science, and so we keep it at the really at that type of text to really capture everything. There'll be one verb in there that's appropriate to give to the kids, and then the finish it is the main idea. If it's a narrative piece, it might be the theme, or in this case, because it's a fable, it would be the moral. So the whole thing together as one sentence in the fable, the crow in the pitcher, Aesop teaches readers that little by little does the trick. Now, those of you who are third grade teachers, you know that's where the title has either it's going to be underlined or have the italics, or it's going to have those quotation marks and then the correct capitalization that really goes along with that. And so a third grade standard, everything else, every grade level has those working parts that it goes along with. That's in ELA. So in the actual science piece, we from last week, our wonderful facilitators got together with you and used some examples. Perhaps they used this one. So what is this type of text? So you might call it a picture for the kids, you might call it an illustration, you might call it a phenomena, and then the title, Changing Trees, and we don't know who the author is, right? So we might call the author an illustrator, or we might, the scientist, whichever one would be appropriate for what we're trying to do. And what would be the main idea? Well, we see that we have the seasons here, and the trees are changing according to the season. So that basically would be our main idea. So we show something like this to the kids to teach them really the frame of name it, verb it, finish it. One such, and really all of you could do it any way that you want to. In the picture, Changing Trees, the author shows that leaves on a tree change during each season, which would be one way of actually doing that. So you can see we can use name it, verb it, finish it across the curriculum, right? We could use it in ELA, we could use it in science, we could use it in math, we could use it all across the way. We want to help the kids to have verbs that they can use, so that they put those down. We don't want them just trying to figure out a verb off the top of their head. Even in 3rd through 5th grade, if they've had no experience with it, they're not going to have, many kids, the sophistication of language to put things in, or they're just going to give you the same one. If you say shows, they're going to do shows every single time, or teaches, that's what they're going to get. We start with the top ones, and then we start to add those other pieces along the way. Here's some examples from the classroom. It's pocket chart where they're using those verbs for the verb it. Some of them will work really well for informative text. Some of them will work really well for argument text. And so we just put those in there as we're going. It's a nice long list that we have there. So you would create something like that. Even with your kids on distance learning, providing them with an anchor chart in a place that has anchor charts that really have those verbs can be very powerful for your kids, so they're not having to guess that, or you're not having to hold something up every time. That can be very powerful as well. So let's go through this fable. We already know this type of text. We've done this one. And I'm showing you this one even in the upper grades, 3rd through 5th, because fables are really great to use because they're short passages, number one, and number two, the actual written moral is at the last sentence of the piece, which is very helpful when we're trying to teach kids how to do name it, verb it, finish it. So look at the last line. At that moment, the grasshopper knew it is best to prepare for the future. So in this one, well, how would we start again? The type of text. So in this case, in the fable, the ant and the grasshopper, the author, it doesn't say who the author is, although we know it's Aesop. The author teaches that it's best to prepare for the future. Now, the next wave of what we would do with this is have kids to take those words, best to prepare for the future, and say it in another way without using the words best, prepare, or future. If we were doing this in a training together and we were in an audience, I'd have you work with a partner and figure out what would be another way of saying that. And we need to teach that. And then we have to teach kids how to do this from an inferred passage, right? There are many fables that will be short, that's good, but the fable is inferred. And so that's where it's going to be very difficult. So here's one from math, right? ELA, we've done that. So we've done one in science, so let's jump over to math. Here, let's say that you're teaching bar graphs in your classroom. At the end of the lesson, you decide to do a name it, verb it, finish it. In fact, every day, I would recommend to you, every day that you hit a piece of text, you're wanting to do a name it, verb it, finish it with the kids. They need to understand what is the main idea of this piece of this text. Many times, even in math, we ask them things such as, how many cheese pizzas were sold from Wednesday through Friday, or which days of the week were the most pizza sold? See, we ask questions like that, but we rarely ask them at the very beginning. What is this whole thing about? What is it? What does it mean? And name it, verb, finish it really kind of forces that conversation so that kids understand the access and the access here really are trying to describe to you really what's going on. So in this one, in the bar graph, pizza sales, the pizza owner or the mathematician shows how many pepperoni and cheese pizzas were sold in a week, something like that, to really get the main idea of this piece. And somewhere in that writing, we might ask them, right, to answer the question. But the first thing that we want to do is really ascertain, do the kids really get the main idea of this? Because when they can read a graph, and we know this is absolutely true in the release questions from the cast, lots of graphs, right? And kids, they have no idea what they're looking at, and that's why we want to spend the time of really helping them to understand what they're looking at. Here's another one that right would be a phenomena. I asked the one day for Greg, who's with us today. Hey Greg, what kind of phenomena do you have? And he sent me a bunch of phenomena pieces that they did for the rollouts, and this is one of them. So in the map, right, that's our text. We don't have a working title here, so you could always give kids a title of this. You could say in the map of the, of different regions in California, however you want to do that. The cartographer shows the flow of water from the Central Valley to the ocean, something like that, to really capture the main idea, or whatever you're trying to teach with that particular one. Those of you who are mathematicians, scientists of our group, you would come up with some just really phenomenal ones. But we want to give kids the opportunity to really have that phenomena-based teaching that we have, and really name it, verb it, finish it is a wonderful way to really help them to get that language in there, a common language, a common strategy that they can really capture what we're trying to do. Here is a social studies piece. So what would we do here? So what's the title? Very good, Events in the Life of Benjamin Franklin. Before that, what is the type of text? Yeah, I heard you coming right through the camera. This is a timeline. And then who is the author? Looks like a vertex42.com. No, let's just say the historian. That probably would be easier for us. I guess we could have said the author, but so in the timeline, events in the life of Benjamin Franklin, the historian shows the most significant, I was going to say events, but that would be saying the same thing, the most significant facts or significant facts that happen in the life of Benjamin Franklin. I was going to say it again, between or in the 18th century. And so we have that opportunity to, or from 1700 to 1800, or from his life from, looks like 1706 through 1790. So however we want to do that, really, we can do that again in every type of text. So let's apply this to what we did then. Last week, right? What foods do snails eat? That's the title of this segment of the video. So in the video, what foods do snails eat? Fred, he was our guy, right? From the Exploratorium. We could do shows, put, offered, gave, really anything that we want to. As an example here, I forgot to put the example in. So Fred put pieces of food in front of the snails to see if they would eat it. So something that really captures what was the main idea of the event. We don't have to do a claim here, and a name it, verb it, finish it is usually not the appropriate place to do the claim yet. We're just capturing the main idea of the piece. Later on, we'll get into actually writing and stating that claim. If you need more help with that, I would love to sit down with you or do a training with you on that very thing, on how to write a claim, that argument, but starting it all off, that name it, verb it, finish it, very powerful. Could you use it as a one sentence to do a claim? You could, but in a longer piece, we really want, or even that 3 sentences, name it, verb it, finish it, record your observation, and then state that claim. 3 separate sentences at least, I think, but a name, a verb, finish it. We try to keep that pure and not try to tie too many things to it in order to help them. Now, in 3rd through 5th grade, we've got our work cut out for us, right? Because the passages don't stay small. We don't always have a picture, right? Sometimes we have articles that we have to do. So how do you get the main idea out of an article? You all know, right? You get it in one place, in the title. No, you can't do that because you don't know what this is going to be about just by reading kiting. In fact, a lot of kids read this and say, what? Oh, this is about kidding or kiddying. I've heard it all from students, right? And so kiting, but we don't know really what it's about. If we read the first sentence, it's maybe what kites are made out of, but that's not what this is about. You would know that you have to read the introductory paragraph, right? So you need some text features to figure out, what's going on. And then you want to have the opportunity to confirm that through the body paragraphs and then also in the conclusion. So you really, as a child, there's no tricks in this. We don't get out of reading everything. We have to show the kids on what's going on. In this one, for sure, that scientific studies, the kites have been used for scientific studies, transportation, entertainment, is central to this piece. And so we want to help them to really determine what that is. And by the way, getting one piece or one article is not really whatever happens in any curriculum. We have to teach them how to do this, but it's still just a scaffold. More often than not, what we get is this. We have multiple sources that are going on, and they have to determine the name it, verb it, finish it from all 3 sources. So 3rd grade generally will have 2, but usually 3 sources, just like all the way through 5th grade. And by the time they get in 5th grade, right, it's not about the amount of sources, it's really the content that we have along the way. So every once in a while, you'll see we have 2 sources, but you'll see that the content will clearly make up for the amount of sources that we have. Here you have something that they're really arguing that kids have choices. So in this first article, it's more explaining that kids just have chores. It's more informational. In source number 2, it's taking a position that kids really should not have chores. And then in the 3rd article, chores really should be given to kids. And so we need a name it, verb it, finish it for all 3 of those. The way that we do that is that in order to combine them is that we might do a name it, verb it, finish it for the first one, and then for source number 2, and then for source number 3, and then we combine them. And it'll sound something like this. In the articles, right, kids and chores, who wants chores, and chores are great. The authors argue that, or explain, or whatever we're going to use that verb, or argues that there are similarities and differences there are advantages and disadvantages for kids doing chores, something like that. So we have our work cut out for our kids, because not only are they having to do a name it, verb it, finish it on one particular article, they have to do it with several sources. Now that's the difference, just so you know, between RL and RI Standard 2 and RL, RI Standard 9. Remember, what we're attempting to do is to move kids from DOK1 up to DOK3 and then to accomplish the writing, which would be DOK4. But we really don't get to that 3 level until we really have more than one source. And congratulations, 3rd through 5th grade, you have nothing but multiple sources. So everything that I said about name it, verb, finish it really would include multiple sources along the way. So to make matters even, I guess, more fun is that we want to reinforce the concepts of what we're trying to do. So it requires practice. Kids really are not going to learn name it, verb, finish it just because we showed them one time or we did it a few times in the classroom. It requires an amount of practice sessions, right? So in this particular research we have from Robert Marzano, he says that if we really want to reinforce something, we need to do it 24 times to get 80% learning. So most teachers, right, they'll be pretty proud of themselves. I taught, I modeled for kids, I taught them, we did it together as a classroom, and then, I had them practice it for a full week. And you know what? My kids still can't do it. Well, that's because if you did it for a full week, right, we have 5 practice sessions that amount to 52% of increased learning. That's not enough in order for our kids to really learn a thing. In fact, no one really learns a new thing by doing that. Just think about learning a brand new musical instrument. Greg, if I were to just hand somebody who had never picked up a guitar and just put it in their hands and said, here are a few chords, now why don't you play, a really rockin' song? No way. They're not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to practice and practice and practice. And then that's really under that, and that assumes that they have all the other fundamentals that are really going on. This is why it's so important, folks, that we really spend that time having that continuity that just is not in your grade level. It really needs to start. So if there's one thing that I could really recommend to you is you're going to want to talk with your colleagues about this and really get a sense of continuity. Hey, look, guys, if we're going to do it, we're going to have to do it right. And we're going to need all of us in order to really accomplish this thing. Why don't we get a training school-wide and really put that together? And by the way, we have examples of that. We have schools that do this pretty much every day. 100% of the teachers are doing name it, verb, finish it. And you know what the most fun is? The next year when those kids come up to the grade level and nobody's opted out, those kids know how to do name it, verb, finish it. Not to the level of that next grade level, but that strategy is in place and it really helps them to really have those pieces in place. Okay, so the practice sessions are very important to have all of those pieces in place, 24 times 80%. And that's just what this research is saying. I'm sure all of you have kids that they're not going to get it after 24. They need 80 times to get 24% learning. Yeah, we all have those kids, right? And then guess what? We have to give it to them. It's not enough for us to just give up. But I'll tell you, I've seen classroom after classroom. Look at that middle column, the increase in learning. Notice how every time that you have a practice session, it actually seems to decrease as you're going. Somewhere down at about the 18th time, I see this all the time, teachers are going, you know what, the kids that get it, and the kids that don't, they're not going to get it. That's never true, by the way. That just means we haven't reinforced it enough, right? Because kids will get it if we continue to go forward. And I'll tell you, it's not going to feel like much after 18. It's less than 1% of increased learning. But I'll tell you, a lot of our kids, English language learners, kids that are struggling, kids, I don't know, behaviorally that mess around in class, right? They're not making all those connections, all different kinds of learning disabilities, reasons why kids aren't connecting to what you're teaching at that time. Magically one day they start to get it and you're like, but why today? Why not yesterday? I'll tell you, that's the magic of teaching, isn't it, folks? It really is in that constant reinforcing and then the glory that happens when they get it one day and then we're like, yes, but why today? I don't know. It's one of those mysteries, but we just keep plugging away and trying to make it happen. So in reinforcement, we have all different kinds of classrooms that are doing this different ways. Some like to chart it up on the wall. Some like to put it, on like on their whiteboard. Some like to have the kids do that in a journal. They put it up in their technology, just some way, frames up in the classroom to reinforce what they're doing. Moving across the curriculum, doing it down in lower grade levels. Look at this, putting the frame right next to that to make sure that it's in there. Putting that in sentence strips, all different kinds of ways of making this happen. Putting it in journals, giving them frames inside what they're doing. Just lots of different ways of making this happen. I really love this. This is a down in a lower grade level, but again, it's something you would love your kids in 3rd through 5th grade to have something like this, right? Every day they read a passage like this, and then they write a name, a verb, and finish it. This is 1st grade, folks. If they can do it down here, our kids can really make this happen. We've seen this in special ed. We've seen this really with all groups of kids, and it's very powerful. And when we talk about equity, we really want to watch what's happening with equity. Do all of our kids have the opportunity to really have that opportunity for continuity? That's a very powerful piece that we have. So just one piece after another, and that's it. Thank you very much. So we want to reinforce it. Here's a child writing it up on a board, and really just reinforcing for the classroom just in some way. Here's Melia's writing. The teacher put together books for everyone. So on the inside cover, the teacher put that frame for the classroom. I've given you all this, by the way, in the PowerPoint so that you would have this. And then on the right-hand side, a reinforcement of that frame, and then they write their name, verb, and finish it. The teacher checks every day, and then they have that opportunity to draw. You may not do that in the upper grades, but every day there's an example. In my classroom, I would give them something to perhaps at the beginning of the year do a name it, verb, and finish it activity. I would take roll, get all my lunch counts, and then I would go out there and check every day to see how the kids were doing and to reinforce those notions. And you can see, you'll know the exact day that kids actually come into that learning. Way down in the lower grades, we might have some kids that need scaffolds in order to get there. Even in the upper grades, kids that cannot write yet. Remember, writing is as much about thinking than it is about actually putting that pencil to paper. But for those kids that cannot write, we have scaffolds to write. The teacher wrote it in really in a highlighter so that they could just trace over that. We have all kinds of opportunities for scaffolding for kids. Some of your kids may need a frame. They may need sentence starters in order to help them. We start with the strategy in general, and most of our kids will be just fine, including our English language learners, with the strategy. But we give kids what they need in order to be successful, not the other way. I just want to make the case that when we give our kids frames and say that frames are the beginning of it, that's really unfair to a child to assume that they need a frame. That is a level of scaffolding that they may need, but we always start out with the goal in mind, which would be the strategy, and then we work down accordingly to what they need and make that adjustment, and then take out the scaffold as it's necessary until they can use that frame. And I'll tell you, I've done that many, many times with kids, and it works. But when we don't give them a strategy and we just give them like a frame, I'll tell you, we sentence many of our kids to a lifelong journey or a prison sentence of only using frames and just having it in one way. That's why you'll see in trainings of mine, I really don't subscribe to just giving frames wholeheartedly, because when teachers use those really at the expense of the strategy, it could actually be detrimental to what we're trying to do for implementing a thing that we're trying to go. But here's some ideas for you to think about that your kids may need. I'm not in any way trying to say that all emerging kids need this particular level. Again, just some ideas to get you thinking about what we're doing. So what kind of time are we looking at right now? Hey, it looks like I have a few more minutes. So I would recommend that you pull some kind of a passage that you start out the kids at the very beginning of the year, and then find out if, I'm sorry, this is I'm going to tell you specifically how this was used. Here's a school that had been doing name it, verb it, finish it. They all got trained on it, but the grade level before decided to opt out Some of the teachers decided to opt out. Some of the kids had the instruction, some of the kids that did not. This particular third grade decided to test their kids, and so they took an oral reading fluency passage from Wonders and decided to use it as a way to get a name and verb it, finish it, just one passage. And so you can see some examples from the kids. This child said, in the fairy tale, the silk threads are the author, looks like, and the author tells us about spiders. So the main idea is not exactly that. Yes, it has spiders in it. It's not a fairy tale. So some work for Andres in doing this. In this one, in the text, Silk Threads, the author tells about spiders use silk to travel around. When you read the article, it's not just about using silk for traveling around. So this only really gets part of it, but not the main idea of the whole thing. Here we have another child in the article, Silk Threads. The author tells about how a spider uses silk thread that is sticky and non-sticky. That's true because the spider uses both of those for a variety of reasons. This one nails it, and we get the picture, a lovely picture that goes along with it. I'm surprised it doesn't say in the picture, "I love you," but I guess the picture alone with the heart says it all, right? And so this is the conclusion of what I'm doing for this particular time. And now we're going to spend a little bit of time having a question time. If any of you have any questions, Mariano, I think you're going to take us to the end of this particular recording time. So I'll turn it over to you right now.